Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Now, more and more there is talk of a cashless society. Gone forever, we are told, might be notes and coins we have taken for granted. The consequences of such a move would be profound. For one thing, without the cash option, your bank, and by extension the state, would see every transaction you make, great and small. The days of the so-called black economy, when cash changes hands without the government having the opportunity to tax it, would finally be over. Suffering already in a world in which fewer and fewer people carry cash anyway are charities dependent on collecting notes and coins. I'm joined now by Darcy Myers, Chair of Trustees for the Smallwood Trust and the Association of Charitable Organisations. Darcy has worked in the charity sector for 30 years and now advises governance and strategy. Good evening, Darcy. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. It's good to be with you.
Tell me, first of all, what are the specific challenges that are faced by small charities in this changing economic world?
Well, if you think there are sort of 164,000 charities in the UK, the vast majority of those, 80%, are small charities. So they have been the group of charities that have been most hit by the move to cashless, and that has been exacerbated with COVID, of course. So I think the government has predicted that by 2026, only 21% of any transactions will take place with cash. So that is a massive move, and charities need to be moving now to adapt to that. And for small charities, not only have they had the impact of COVID to deal with, they have had the cost of changing the way in which they raise the money.
How have these tens of thousands of small charities that you're talking about actually fared since 2020 and the advent of so much that's changed?
Well, one charity I was talking to earlier in the week said, and they're a military charity, they said they have been devastated by COVID and an inability to raise the money they need to raise, because almost all of their fundraising was face-to-face through small events and through direct high street collections. Now, of course, it is now possible to have contactless collection boxes and contactless street collections. But if you're not geared up for that as a charity, and indeed if you weren't geared up for it before the pandemic hit, that's really difficult to adapt to.
I wonder also if in the short term, at least people might be understandably hesitant maybe about transacting with high street charity collections in that way. I wonder if it feels more vulnerable that rather than handing over a £1 coin or a £5 note or whatever to enter into that electronic transaction. I wonder if there's just a hesitancy.
Well, it's adapting, isn't it? It's something that we're not used to doing, but actually it's an increase in security. There's less chance of fraud through using contactless, and for charities, small charities, they're actually able to adapt quite quickly. As I said, there's a challenge of being able to afford to change, but they can be quite agile, and it does bring opportunities to be more long-term relationships. So if people are making online donations, and I think in 2016 you were seeing a sort of 26% increase in one-off online donations, and that is increasing. That actually allows charities to build better relationships with their donors and therefore build trust. And one of the things we have seen over the course of the last 2 years is that public trust in charities has greatly increased.
What does the future hold? And I suppose really what I'm thinking there is, have you been aware of small charities that have actually gone out of, well, business for want of a better word? Have some just been unable to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, no, I know of 3 charities personally that have had to close down because they were unable to sustain themselves during COVID. Now, some charities, the charitable need, the delivery of their objectives, they were unable to do through COVID. And other charities saw a massive increase in demand for their services during the lockdown. But when we're looking at the move to a more cashless society, I think it is about being prepared to change the way in which we fundraise as charities. I would suggest looking at the use of Facebook appeals and other campaigns online. So you're building your communities and being able to feed back effectively the impact of those donations. And that is actually one of the advantages of a cashless fundraising project.
Is there anything that you would suggest that we, the public, can do in the short to medium term to help? How might people? Is there any way in which we could be supporting charities of which people are unaware? Could we be doing more?
Well, I mean, as I said at the beginning, there are 143,000 charities in the UK. That means there are about 700,000 trustees active, and charities are run by volunteers, by a trustee board. But there are 90,000 vacancies for trusteeships. So that's one appeal I would put out. If you would like to be more involved in your local charity or even a national charity, approach them and find out what the opportunities are for you to be an active member of that charity, whether it is through a trusteeship or through volunteering. That is a really powerful way that you can provide practical help. And if you're interested in becoming a trustee, I would suggest you go and have a look at Getting On Board, which is a charity that helps people become trustees.
Darcy, bear with me while I bring in my panel guests who are here with me this evening. Laura, that brings home to me the extent to which the broad-ranging potential impact of stopping using cash. It never even crossed my mind that small, high street collections, rattling tins and buckets and whatever would be impacted, but of course they will. It gives a sense of how far-reaching might be the move away from coins and notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a few things I'd say in response to that. I like giving cash to charities because it feels like I am giving, I am donating. It comes from my pocket, through my hand, into a bucket.
It's like value.
What I don't like is when companies do this kind of automatic suggestion that you can give to charity as well. You're paying for something, you see the service charge, you're like, hang on, what, I'm giving how much to which charity? Now, I don't want to sound curmudgeonly, but that doesn't feel right for me as a type of charity donation. Now, I read some Barclaycard research that said that charities are going to lose out £80 million if they don't make a switch to collecting electronically. But I just want to say, adding on to restaurant bills isn't the way forward for me. I think we have to be careful of saying that we're going to go cashless. We're nowhere near ready to go cashless. Apparently, about 10 million people in this country would really struggle to go cashless. There was the cash review, and that's 3 years ago, and there's the cash census recently. About 10 million people still rely on using cash. 1.5 million people don't have a bank account in this country. And this whole, communities of people, you've got people in rural communities, people who struggle with budgeting, perhaps they're low income, and it's much easier to manage your money, for a lot of people if it's with actual physical cash, people with mental health problems. Now, I was chatting to the taxi driver on the way here. You'll be surprised how often I do a bit of research on the way here in a taxi.
I'm not surprised.
And he's from a Pakistani community, and he said in the shops he goes to, they don't like taking cards because of the transaction fees. So actually, lots of shops still prefer cash. In fact, I think it's 1 in 4 high street shops say that cash is still the most popular way for customers to pay. So cash isn't going anywhere, at least not in the next generation, I don't think.
Do you agree? Do you think... It strikes me that we've had cash, we've had coinage and the rest for thousands of years. Can one generation of government really do away with something so entrenched?
No, I don't think so. Even if you get rid of cash, people will continue to trade in sort of tangible assets because that's the most natural way to do so. When you sort of make cash a sort of a non-tangible thing where all the transactions are just numbers on a screen, it becomes very sort of abstract. I think physical transactions are a natural thing. And I think it's less the charities that we need to worry about, of course we do, but also homeless people. At the moment, they're reliant a lot on people just go, I've got a bit of change in my pocket, or I'll throw it in the cup. You can't expect homeless people to go out and get card machines and and set up a system and have a bank account. They can't get bank accounts because they don't have addresses. The cycle is the problem. So I do think there's a number of areas where losing cash is going to become a huge issue. But fundamentally, I think you remove currency from the gold standard or from you create fiat currency, and then you put it all online so you can't trade physically. The natural thing is that people will just find another way to trade. So the more abstract that the currency becomes, the less it means anything, and the less it actually dominates the way that people continue to trade. That would be my reading of it.
Can I make a little mini future trend prediction as well? I actually think, shall I go out and say it? I'll say it. I think we're going to have more cash in the near future because there's a lot of mistrust at the moment about cybercrime and fraud.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm sick to the back teeth of all the questions my bank asks me when I want to do something with my money. And do you know what's really simple about getting out a wad of cash? I don't have to spend 10 minutes answering questions about what I wanted to use my money for with the bank. I mean, have you seen people queuing outside ATMs in Russia? Yeah, so at the moment there's this kind of people want.
There's an instinct to want to actually have your hands on physical value.
Yes.
Something that actually is tangible.
Under the mattress sort of level. Now, I was at a dinner party the other week and very well-to-do couple were talking about how they have a lot of cash in their house now and wait for it, gold. Because they're not sure how things are going to go in the world. And I think actually people want to return to having cash in their pocket, in their hand and gold under the mattress or under the floorboards in times when they're worried about... I mean, we keep being told that cybercrime is our next big threat. So what do people feel safe with? Money, physical money.
So we had that thing with stockpiling. I think it's the same instinct. As soon as things start to go wrong, people go, I need actual things, tangible assets, not just abstract numbers on a screen. Because the moment the banks say, no, you can't spend that money, we've frozen it, or there's nothing to buy with it, what good is that money? You can't eat numbers on a screen. People start stockpiling, they start buying gold, they start buying, whatever else.
Darcy, I'm assuming that you're still with us and still listening to what my guests are saying. There is something very, very physical, visceral, isn't there, about that the cash transaction? I know exactly what Laura means when I see the Royal British Legion and the poppy collection, in every October and running up to November. I like to part with cash. It makes it a more complete it's not a transaction, is it? It's a more complete gesture somehow. And I, like Laura and like Benjamin, I feel that not only because of charities, but in so many ways in society, there is a hunger and a need to retain cash, so that I think we will continue to see buckets and cans rattling on the high streets and elsewhere, because I don't think cash is going anywhere.
Well, yes, I think Laura makes a good point as well about parts of society that are still very much cash orientated. But on average, an individual supports about 5 charities in a year, so that they have maybe 2 or 3 that they have long-term relationships with, and that moving it to a more cashless transaction with those charities is understandable and easier. But it's the small donations that you are outlining, whether it's a high street collection or your local scouts or whatever it is, that is very much a cashless transaction, as you say. So I think that will remain, but we are moving to a cashless society, and I don't agree that we're going to stay a cashed society. I think within the next 5 years we'll see many more opportunities to pay cashless. I mean, I was a bit of a Luddite. I was very slow to start using my phone to pay contactless, and indeed I needed a few lessons from my daughter to show me how to do it. I think I've got the hang of it now, but it is just a gradual move, and I think COVID has moved that on much more quickly.
Such an important consideration that you've made us aware of this evening. So thank you so much, Darcy Myers, Chair of Trustees for the Smallwood Trust and the Association of Charitable Organisations. Thank you for being with us tonight.